I've done some research. I have Googled our guest today.
Oh, wow. Really?
And
What
it
have you
says,
found?
well, Avry Sports Show, it says here, the long-running sports podcast of Avry Lewis-McDougall, where he combines sports, humour, fashion, and a little taste of Canada for your entertainment. Now, Phil's there in his jumper. I'm here in a t-shirt. Thankfully, you can't see what's below the below the camera. And here's Avry from Canada, joining us live on this program. Blazer, hat, wonderful glasses. So this is obviously what Canada can bring to rugby league. Is style. Avry, thank you for joining us and taking up some of your time thousands of miles away here on 4020 Not Live. Obviously, we're in the north of England. We're very much in the heartlands of rugby league, and we want you in Toronto to feel like you're part of the heartlands too. What got you into? Obviously, I kind of know the answer to this. It's going to be Toronto Wolfpack, but what got you into watching rugby league?
What got me into rugby league? That's a good question. I think like most Canadians, when we know rugby union. I covered the union side as a media member. I went to their games in Toronto and in Edmonton, Alberta. But I think when I got into the game was when I saw on CTV News many years ago, Eric Perez. I saw a story. Investor to bring in team to Toronto in Super League. I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's interesting. What's Super League? What's that? I heard of it before, but I didn't really know what it was exactly. So I Googled it. I saw the idea of bringing a team to Canada. I thought, that's pretty ambitious. So I looked into it more, researched the game more, and thought, okay, if he can make this happen, this will change an entire sport. I did my homework. I watched more games of Super League, NRL, and then because I'm a longtime YouTuber, and what I do best is, talking about the sport, giving my thoughts on it. And I did one video that got about 700 views. I did a second one, and it just started to snowball my involvement in the game more and more, to which I, reached out to Wolfpack, got media credentials to go to games. And from that, I met players at one year in Toronto. And then last year, I got an email on Facebook. Now, if you're on Facebook and if you're getting a job offer to do a TV show, your first instinct is, this has to be a scam. No one has to do a job in TV via Facebook. So I looked up who it was. It was the City Talking and Lee and Stacey Hicken from the City Talking, who offered me a job on a new show on Sky last year inside Super League. So I did my research on the City Talking and realized that, yeah, they're legitimate. They produce documentaries on Leeds United and their whole background on that. I figured, cool. So I got involved with that and making videos on the Wolfpack, 2 minutes long. And of course, COVID derailed our plans to do a full season-long show where I would have eventually taken my show from my basement to Lamport Stadium, where I would have done recaps here at Lamport. That was derailed. But either way, it was still a very fun show to be a part of on Sky. And I know I had my supporters, I had my detractors, because I know some in Rugby League didn't like my voice, didn't like how I sounded. But end of the day, my mentality, gentlemen, is, what? You'll have your supporters, but you cannot please everybody. If you try to please all, you'll drive yourself mad. You gotta live with that. That's just life.
Well, that was the advice that was given to a couple of great television commentators, Eddie Waring and Ray French over here, that if you can please 50% of the people, you're halfway to being a complete success. But just looking at you, you are a very different view of rugby league to what we're used to. And I think the important thing is just to establish at the moment, how are things with you in Toronto? Because we've got this view of what's happening over here. We've got some difficulties even today with teams that can't fulfill fixtures and COVID tests that are being positive, and all we've really heard about Toronto and the Wolfpack is you had to pull out. So first of all, how are you all over there, and what's society like?
We're trying to get through things. Unfortunately, right now in Toronto, there's a shutdown of 28 days due to the COVID numbers spiking dramatically. And we got to get through that, because in Ontario and in most of Canada, the country starts to reopen again in phases. Every province has their own phase that they are going into. Some are doing better than others. Some are doing worse. But in Ontario, they are in the middle of their pause. I know they had opened up restaurants, theaters. Kids are going back to school, which wasn't really a great the virus still impacting much of the province. But I think when you're talking about the Wolfpack and their mentality, of course, yes, COVID did play major factors to why they had to pull out, but also financially. And that was an issue that went back for quite some time. I know John Davidson had done reporting. You know, people want to get on John Davidson, but he's a journalist. He's doing his job, as anyone would in sports. You're doing your job as a journalist. You saw that there was issues financially with the Wolfpack, and unfortunately, it didn't catch up to David Argyle. It was going to catch me eventually, you know, with the unpaid wages, with improper visas. And unfortunately, it happened at a time in which there was a worldwide virus plaguing the planet, and your team can't play home games. So yeah, I see why his team did have to pull out. But one thing that has always irked me, gentlemen, is the fact that the Wolfpack are being seen as the enemy, that we're the enemy. We're not the enemy. We love everybody. I love the Heartland. I love people in Northern England. We want to embrace, we want to be a part of the game. We're not the enemy. All we want to do is get the game growing to a level that's never been seen before. I would love to see Rugby League on an ESPN or a Fox Sports Live or a TSN on a consistent basis. We just want to see the game grow and become a true global sport.
In terms again of our perceptions over here, they will be quite different to how you view the Wolfpack over there. David Argyle has had mixed reviews. Obviously, the money that he's put into the game to get the team up and running and moving through the divisions has been lauded, and it's come to a point where it looks as though he's now being painted as the pariah behind the current fall of the team. How do you see him over there? Is he just another sporting entrepreneur who took a project as far as he can, he moves out the way, and the next one comes in? You know, how do you view him? What's his legacy?
I view him as someone who had great ambition to get the sport growing in the country, but it's always going to be a knock on him for not paying players and not paying staff. That's always going to be the biggest knock on him, because you can, of course, don't get me wrong, of course, his vision for growth sport was great. You have more clinics for getting the sport in Ontario and across the country. We had our own state of origin back in January at Lamport. It was under the indoor bubble at the stadium that brought all the players from Eastern Canada and Western Canada. Great vision. He wanted to see more kids playing, everything else. But my biggest knock again is, you can't be this great owner if you're not paying your staff, if you're not paying your players. It's always going to be a blight on you, and people are going to think, well, if you didn't have the money to sustain this, then why didn't he get out sooner? Why did he let this go as long as it did? To which he made this team, to many, appear to be very unstable.
And that's got to be not just a big factor for people over here, but obviously over there as well, because you've got long-established franchises in Toronto, and I use the word franchise because that's the right word to use, and people hate me using it in terms of rugby league, but you've got long-established sports, long-established franchises. Rugby league comes in from absolutely nowhere, a blaze of publicity to an extent and success, and then suddenly all these problems mount up, and now we're going to go at least over a year without a game on home soil.
Right. No, it's unfortunate. And you look at the attendance that we had in Toronto. The Wolfpack had been around for less than a decade, and you had over 8,000 people in Lamport Stadium. And Lamport Stadium is a very old. It's used by high schools and junior high and community leagues. It's not not glamorous. You're not gonna find luxury boxes and everything like it. Even the Wi-Fi at Lamport is iffy at best. It's an old facility, but you were still able to get 8,000 to 9,000 people there enjoying it. You had the Mayor of Toronto, John Tory, there. You had local celebrities going in there, and their knowledge of the game may have been minimal. And that's what hurt, because if we had a season in Toronto again in 2020, you might have had every single game close to 10,000 fans. Heck, you might have had to move a few games to BMO possibly.
In terms of the media, obviously you're a part of it. You study it. You were invited to be part of the Super League show over here. I think a lot of the criticism, probably again unfounded from people over here, was we didn't just come up with a television deal in Canada that brought added value to Super League. How's the sport perceived? If it was ranked in, you're a Canadian broadcaster, you want to put some product out there. how's Rugby League seen? Has it got a profile? Will it get a television deal at some point?
I think eventually it will. I think what's going to help is that you have Toronto, you have Ottawa coming in as well, and you have New York who wants to come in as well and next year. Because one thing Rugby League is that it's very TV friendly to a Canadian. The limited tackles to a Canadian audience is like a North American football, it's like NFL. They can relate to 6 tackles, 4 downs, or 3 downs, and the speed is something that I think really helps a Canadian viewer get into the sport a little bit more. That's why I think we'll eventually hope give this game a television deal, be it on the CBC, be it on a Sportsnet, or be it on a TSN, because local reporters here have loved the game. They enjoy the speed, and they have spoken highly about every aspect of the Wolfpack and Super League from the past 2 years.
And we think that sometime next week there'll be a debate amongst the Super League owners about Carlo Livolsi and his business plan. Is he somebody you know? Does he have a brand behind him that is recognisable in North America? We accept that clearly he is a wealthy guy, but can he fund a sporting franchise in the same way that David Argyle did at the beginning?
You know what? He is very quiet. He's very low profile. He's mentioned before he doesn't want the attention of a David Argyle. I've heard of his wolf grooming before, but aside from that, all I know is that he has some money, but he's very quiet. Don't expect to see him at training. Don't expect to see him doing much media. He is a very low profile person. So he might do maybe a Sky interview once in a while or a TSN, but beyond that, he is very low profile, gentlemen.
So he won't be buying beers for the fans in the crowd as Mr. Argyle did on many occasions.
I wouldn't count on that. No, I would doubt that very much.
It does seem that one of the key parts of the Toronto success up to this point has been the closeness of the players to the supporters, which is something which obviously in bigger sports you can't have because of the security issues and whatever. But it does seem that it's very tight knit between the supporters and the players and the organisation over there. And obviously, I just worry that if this vote goes the wrong way for Toronto, that the work of the last 4 years, the positives and the negatives, will all be worth nothing.
I agree with that, especially now. And if the vote goes against Toronto, if you're Ottawa and if you're in New York, you might think to yourself, well, if we're going to get to a point where they don't want us to have a share of the pie, then why are we continuing? Are we going to continue through the championship and League One only to get to a point where, a team would say, I don't want you because you're overseas, you're this, you're that. It'll hurt immensely towards those teams, and it might kill the entire plan for expansion in this part of the world for who knows how long. So again, it's got to be collective thinking. It can't just be the thinking of how can the Wolfpack help my squad and help my squad alone. It's got to be how can this vote help our game grow for the next 10, 15, and 25 years.
In terms of one of the other issues that fans over here get extremely het up about, the constitution of your team, or the team that pulls on the shirt that represents your city. I think we make a lot more about that than you do. Clearly, you've seen firsthand the standard of community rugby league in Canada, and there aren't too many of those players playing at the moment that could play at the top Super League professional level. So for the foreseeable future, you're going to have a side representing the city that is made up of people that don't come from Toronto. Is that even an issue for you over there? I mean, it seems to be more of a problem for us over here.
No. This part of the world, all we care about is, can this team win? Is this team good? That's our mentality here is, if you can win, then we don't care. I mean, of course, yes, you want Canadians. Of course, the goal is to, yes, get players from Toronto on this squad who are playing consistently in Super League. But for right now, we know it's going to take time. We know it's going to take 5, 10, 15 years. I mean, when in NRL, were people screaming in New Zealand, oh, there's New Zealanders here back in the 90s? I don't think they were. It's going to take a long time to get Canadians making up a part of this roster. But the average Toronto fan, they just want to see the Wolfpack do well and win a lot of titles. That's all they care about. They don't care if the players come really from England or Australia or New Zealand or Tonga. It doesn't matter to them. We just care about seeing the Wolfpack do really well and win a lot of games.
In terms as well of Richard sort of mentioned it. You won't have played for a year. We don't know what the world's going to look like tomorrow at the moment, never mind in another year's time. But there is a possibility that Toronto won't be allowed to play any home games in 2021, and they may well, if they are allowed back into Super League, be playing all of their matches over here. You'll be able to follow them if they do, but how much damage would it do if you didn't have any home games for effectively 2 seasons?
It would be crippling. If the Wolfpack aren't getting equal money from Sky, that'll be very crippling because this is a team that we saw last year is reliant on the gate revenue. It's going to hurt a lot if they tell them again, you can't play in Toronto. This is a team that relies on playing at home and getting those 9,000 or 8,000 fans in Lamport every single week. So that's going to hurt a lot if this team can play any home games in Canada again.
I do like the description of Lamport. It does remind me of, and I'm sure Phil will agree, of a lot of grounds in rugby league. Some of our less modern grounds. I mean, when you watch games when Toronto have played over here, through their journey through League One to the Championship and Super League, although obviously didn't play too many games in the top division, what did you make of how rugby league looks over here as compared to your bijou home in Lamport?
You can tell watching a game in England, you can tell rugby league is a lot more higher profile. You can tell that the pitches are made for the game in England. But at Lamport is a multi-purpose stadium. So when people play soccer, they play field hockey. Lamport has to sustain more than one sport. That's why you see lines of every sport all over the pitch. And I saw the comments. I saw the that's not a proper pitch. Why don't they fix that? Well, sorry, they can't. It's got to be shared by the football side, by field hockey teams, by football teams. We got to share the pitch. We can't just make it for the Wolfpack. That's how it is over here in Toronto with our stadiums.
One of the things North American sport does better than anyone, and clearly something we can learn from even after 125 years, is that you love your superstars. Clearly, the players in the other sports that are big over there are paid massive money, but everybody knows their name. And you've had a couple on the roster like Sonny Bill Williams who are really marketable. You've got a coach at the moment. Hopefully, he'll stick with you if all of this can be resolved. Who is one of the true characters of the game. Doesn't say a lot, but when he does, you tend to want to listen. Can you market people like that? Because we've never managed to successfully do it over here.
Of course you can. I think so. Like when you got a coach who says that the game belongs in major markets and major cities like that, the fans here rally around that. When you have a coach from England who says, yeah, the game should be these major cities, the locals will say, yeah, we belong here. And Sonny Bill Williams, that's a name where even a casual fan of rugby league or union or boxing has a familiarity to. He is someone where, say he comes back next year and say things improve in Canada, you'll see Sonny Bill going to Toronto Blue Jays games to throw out the first pitch. You'll see him probably courtside at Toronto Raptors games. You'll probably see him in advertising, cross-promoting the Wolfpack would say the Maple Leafs. That is the kind of guy you're going to see. And Super League has never had the ability to have not just someone like Sonny Bill Williams, but have him play in a market that is also shared with the NBA, the NHL, and Major League Baseball. That's a first, which if you can take advantage of that, by all means, go ahead and do that.
It does seem that I say North America, watch Pardon the Interruption or Around the Horn on occasion. It does seem that in America, and I'm assuming Canada's the same, unlike England where everything is about football. Cricket and rugby union can think they're big sports, but everything is dominated by football January to December. It does seem that in North America, at least, the major sports get their time to shine throughout the year. Where can rugby league fit into that? Obviously, I don't think rugby league is ever going to usurp the NRL, the NFL rather, or the NHL or whatever has been the major sport. But where can rugby league fit in that sporting picture?
I think it can fit nicely somewhere, in the line of alongside Major League Soccer, because the one thing with Wolfpack is that their games really do not clash with, say, the CFL or baseball too much. They play in a little spot where they might play before or after the Toronto FC games. So they're not clashing too much other sports leagues. They play usually on Sunday afternoons, Saturday afternoons. That's a time period where you're not clashing too many other sports. I mean, there might be a Blue Jays game later on that day, but if they can stay in that niche of playing on the Sunday afternoons, I think they have a great little spot there where fans aren't trying to say, oh, how can I go to a Wolfpack game and go to a Raptors game at the same time? So what they have right now playing on Sunday afternoons and Saturday afternoons works for them. And I think it's a great time slot for them to play in Canada.
You mentioned the sport needs to look 5, 10, 15 years ahead with regard to things like player development. Have to tell you, it's not something we're very good at. But the World Cup was due to be played in North America in 2025. And for whatever reason, again, the entrepreneur who'd been chosen to deliver it wasn't quite the right person, couldn't back it up. Do you think that we should be brave and bold at this time and rekindle that, or at least give you hope that maybe by 2029, the big impetus that you might need to take the sport to the level that you've already spoken about is bringing a global event to your market? Would that have a major difference?
I think so. I think, people always cite, the World Cup of Soccer in 94 came to America. A lot of Americans say that was a jumping off point for getting involved in the game by seeing the world's biggest players taking part in games in New Jersey and California. I feel for Rugby League, that could be the biggest thing, is to take that big jump field, get out of your comfort zone and say, okay, we're going to try it again in North America. We're going to give it another shot, because you might attract those kids to watching the Super League, to watching NRL. You might get a kid falling in love with someone like a Bevan French or James Tedesco if they're playing games in Vancouver, Toronto, Edmonton, LA, whatever, because this is going to be their first time exposed to the game, and they're going to research who someone like these guys are. They're going to want to see who Nathan Cleary is, because I tell you, if someone like Nathan Cleary or someone like James Tedesco can get the attention of an audience in media in Canada or in America, then that is going to be a major win for the game as a whole.
Yeah, you've named more NRL players than I recognise there, so it's slightly concerning.
I watch both leagues all the time. I have no problem watching both. I don't discriminate against Super League or NRL.
No, it's on far too early in the morning for me. I'm used to at the moment, because of the current situation in the world. I'm not working, so I'm used to staying up late and not getting up in time to watch these games. Although I did manage to catch the second half of the grand final on Sunday. And listening to Gus Gould on commentary, it sounds like if Melbourne hadn't scored all those points in the first half, then Penrith would have won, which is exciting. What time did it kick off your time, Avry?
Oh, for me, it was about 2:40 in the morning.
See, I've got no excuse enough, I know.
When I watch, at least Super League games for me are on around 8 in the morning, 8 o'clock, 9 in the morning, around breakfast time. NRL games, it's always a battle for me of, should I stay up or should I set my alarm, go to bed early and wake up for it? It's always that battle of, what should I do, stay awake or go to bed early? It's really tough, but you know what? I figure it out most times when I'm watching NRL.
Stay awake with beer and a takeaway. That's the answer. I was going to ask you about the word rugby, because again, we have some hang-ups over here. Understandably, there's a history and a tradition, and there's an enmity, there's a chip on both shoulders, if you like. There's a class distinction. I know that you're a student of how the game has got to be where it is today. Presumably just the word rugby isn't an issue over in North America and Canada in particular, because you'll watch both codes, you'll appreciate them for what they are, you'll choose your preference. If you build up one, it has a reflected glory on another. It's something that we wouldn't imagine over here, but you're not tied down with all that history, are you? So does it matter to you that we spend a lot of time saying, we're definitely not rugby union, or does a team doing well, like, I don't know, the Argonauts, does that help the Wolfpack or not?
You know what? There really is no distinction between the two. The average person here will think it's all rugby. They don't really know league or union. They think it's all rugby. Like, when I first got my job with inside Super League, my dad wanted to know, like, what difference is between league and union. I explained to my dad what differences were. And that was he didn't realize there was two different codes. He had no idea. And when I told him what league was, he said to me, "Then why?" I told him what league was. He said to me, "Why is it not more popular? Why do people like this more?" Because he saw it as football. He saw it as football. But yeah, but if you go across the country and you say rugby, they don't care, and they don't understand why there's a war when it is overall rugby as a code. It's still a similar game. It is still similarities. The origins came out of the same sport originally before the separation in 1895. So they don't understand the idea as to why there's hostility, because if you come to Canada, you will see the Wolfpack and the Toronto Arrows in union doing partnerships with each other. There is harmony among the codes here in Canada because we figure, hey, listen, we're all rugby. Why don't we all try and eat at the same table? There's no reason to divide our codes when neither code is number one sport in Canada. It doesn't make any sense. So
we've tried that a few times over here, but it just, I think everyone's sides are so ingrained that Leeds have had the Tykes or Carnegie, whatever they're called. I guess it works to an extent in Newcastle, where the Falcons, obviously the Union side in the top division, the Thunder, the league side, are trying to work their way up the divisions to get into Super League, and they seem to work well together. But I'm not sure the fan base has mixed. Certainly it didn't work at Leeds, where fans would not turn up to watch the other. Talking about fans, you mentioned Toronto people want to see a winning team, whatever sport that is. Now, is it concerning that with the way Super League started, and obviously we have no idea how it would have gone because, you've got a super coach there in Brian McDermott, the team would have gelled after a while, but it didn't start well for the Wolfpack. Is there a concern that the fans would have dropped off seeing a team perhaps getting their side beaten week in, week out, as it was looking like at the start of the year anyway?
I think to an extent, somewhat it may have dropped off. But I think the Wolfpack would have figured. I think they would have figured it out. I think it would have been again, undermanned team, limited players, a step up. It was about catching up to Super League level. It was about catching up and trying to recover because learning curve was very steep. But I think the fans would have still been around. They still have been around the team because there's still a mentality of, in Toronto, we'll figure it out. We'll hang around, we'll stick around, because history has shown that the Wolfpack, when they have lost or fallen into a rut, they've always turned it around, no matter how long or how short things have been. So I think the fans will stick around. The big concern more would have been if the Wolfpack lose and the losing stage, consistently to multiple seasons. That's when you might get concern. But 1 year of a struggle, no, I think fans will stick around. It may have dropped off by maybe 1,000 or so, but they will stick around for the most part to watch your team win, lose, or draw.
You told us that Carlo Livolsi is a secretive man. Clearly, the face of the team for us over here, I imagine for you over there, is Bob Hunter. I would imagine that you would have come across Bob in different sports over there. He's a senior sports administrator. Confidence in him that if he's given the reins and this is allowed to go ahead, that we'll see some kind of growth and development in the Wolfpack and Toronto?
I think so, yeah. Bob Hunter has experience with dealing with other teams in MLSC, which controls the Raptors, Maple Leafs, and Toronto. He had experience dealing with teams in this part of the world. And again, I think he is the right person to help navigate the waters, at least publicly, in this part of the world. He said all the right things. He's done all the right things publicly. And again, I feel he is going to help this team get through the waters right now, which I don't think will last too long. Of course, the virus still in play, but I think he is still the right person to get through, at least for the North American audience and North American fans, I feel, in my mind, gentlemen.
It is this, they've always been described as the first transatlantic sports team, which, of course, as we know, is not true, because the World League of American Football was a thing, albeit briefly, and then became NFL Europe. And the London Monarchs were a massive success for a very short period of time in the early 90s, and then for whatever reason that competition died off. And I guess that our history of rugby league and expansion is not great. We've had teams very close to the heartlands that haven't worked out. And our good friend Mr. Schofield wrote a column a few weeks ago about how a team in Scarborough, not Scarborough, Ontario, but Scarborough, North Yorkshire, didn't work out after a year, and how this is a damning indictment of how Toronto will not work going forward. With all the challenges, and obviously we had no idea that COVID would happen and all that. If Toronto did have the funding from Super League, you're confident they could be a success going forward and buck the trend of failed expansion in the sport?
Absolutely. If the funding came in, this would have worked even way better. This would have been a spectacular thing to have the funding, because you're playing shorthanded. We're not getting that fair share of money from Sky. You wouldn't see it happen in the NBA. You would never see expansion team in the NBA say, okay, you're in, but you're not getting TV money. It wouldn't work. Or same for hockey, or same for baseball. It just wouldn't work. If you're a member fully, you get all the same things that the rest of us get. And if Wolfpack got that, they'd be able to bring a lot more to the team. They'd be able to improve a lot more. And I just feel that's so weird, the idea of having one member that is getting less than the rest of the teams, playing the same league, playing the same schedule, playing the same players. It didn't make sense to me. I felt it was an unfair advantage just because you got a team based in Canada.
Does rugby league look odd to you, not least geographically? I mean, your sports are all based in big cities. They're franchises. They can be picked up and moved at very short notice. You wouldn't dream, apart from maybe a Green Bay, perhaps in the NFL, of being anything other than a major centre of population. You look over here. It's very hard for us to look at ourselves, but you look over here and go, there's 11 teams that all play within like 70 miles of each other, and they're all in a very restricted geographical region of a country. Do you find us slightly odd?
Only Richard, but
well, that went without.
No, you're good, Phil. But you know what's funny, because it's interesting, because it's a major culture clash when you have Toronto and markets like Castleford, Lay, and even when we've had fans come to Toronto. I remember before we had a proper defined press box, it took a few years before we had a press box. So every game the Wolfpack would say it's funny. There's a story here. Every game before the Wolfpack press box, the Wolfpack officials would take me in the stadium and they would try and find somewhere for me to sit. They would try and find where should I sit, and it would be in the stand with fans somewhere. It could be just with fans in the random supporters group. So I'd sit there, and we had fans from Lay who came over, and they're asking me the entire game, why are there mascots? Why are there t-shirt cannons? Why are there fireworks? So I had to explain the entire game. Well, that's how things are. They didn't understand this culture of the game being more than just the game. They didn't get the halftime entertainment. So I saw the major culture clashes, but it's different though. I think it makes it very unique to learn about the cultures of rugby league and to see how we do things are totally different. But I'll say this much. It is interesting to see how London has never been able to get a team that really captured the city, and that market has been an anomaly for going on some 40 years. I feel it's really strange that London has never really worked in having a team that just been able to sustain itself.
You mentioned as well the crowds that were attracted and gradually went up as the Wolfpack went through the divisions to 9,500 for the playoff game, and who knows what it would have been this year. Again, some of the misdirected criticism from people over here is there's only that number of people in the game because you're giving away free tickets, or because they're really there to sample a beer because there's a festival on or whatever. Does that matter? Again, do we need to understand that part of the sporting occasion where you are, if we're coming into your market as much as you're coming into ours, is you just do things a bit differently, and people do walk in 20 minutes after a game has started, and they will go behind the posts and try 6 different beers while the game's actually going on. But actually that's how you do it. And if some have come on a free beer ticket but they come the following week because they had such a good time, do we get too hung up about all of that?
I'll say to an extent, you probably do. And again, that's your culture. Again, to you guys over there, it's foreign. You don't know it. And you know what? I can't bash that, because that you know things differently than how we know sporting culture here. But in Toronto and Canada, people do come a little bit late because one thing is that Toronto Transit, our subway system, has issues. So you may be stuck in the train because there's been an accident or because the train just shut down because it's on a bad train. So you're stuck in the middle of the street for 20 minutes waiting for a next train to take you to the ground. That's how it is. But yeah, people do walk around. They do want to go and to the beer garden. They do want to get some food during the game because the whole marketing has been that, yes, you didn't be here to watch Wolfpack play rugby league, but it's an event. It's a social gathering. It's not just come here at 1 p.m., sit down, don't move, watch the game, use the loo, and then go home. That's not how the game's marketed here. It's a social event where you come and you enjoy the game and you have a good time, because why would you not want to make this an event? Because you want to appeal to the crowds of all creeds, all nations, young, old, whatever have you.
So you think the train system's bad there? You try the M62 on a Friday night.
As we always say, it's easier to get to Hull and back than it is to Leeds sometimes, because Headingley's in the middle of a very exciting and up-and-coming residential area. I think that's fair to say. That's the one thing that when I started watching ice hockey in the mid-90s in Sheffield, and obviously there's a massive golfing class between the NHL and the British League, and the stars of our league at that time, and continue to be Canadians who obviously were either NHL players who had dropped off and were dropping down towards the end of their career, or ones who never made it. That's the one of the things that strikes me at Toronto is you've made stars out of players who are not the best rugby league players in the world. And that's no disrespect to them, because we're not talking about the Sonny Bill Williams at this point. We're talking the players who've got Toronto up to that point. But the fans don't care that they're not the best because they've got that shirt on. They're trying their best for the Wolfpack cause.
Exactly. A great example of that is Blake Wallace. Blake Wallace has lived in Toronto part-time now. Like, he has a part-time residence here in the city. He loves Toronto. You can see Blake Wallace walking around Ontario. Like, he fell in love with this place. Guys like Andrew Dixon, they fell in love with this place. Like, that is the one thing with Toronto. If you put on a Wolfpack shirt, you play your hardest, the city will embrace you. You'll go down to have lunch, and you'll have fans want to take pictures with you. You'll have fans saying that was a great game you played in. And they may not have known who you were a month ago, but within that month, they're going to find out your story, and they're going to embrace you, and they're going to make you a cult hero in this city.
Is it encouraging as well that you quite rightly mentioned that one of the downfalls of the end of the Argyle regime was not paying his players? But some of those players who clearly are still waiting to be paid have been very vociferous in support of bringing the Wolfpack back and not losing the uniqueness you've just been talking about. So people like John Wilkin, who was a very eloquent guy anyway, have been so forthright in saying this is something that the sport can't afford to lose. They've been really good advocates and ambassadors for Toronto.
Of course they have been, yeah. And John was entirely correct, because of course your comrades aren't getting paid. You want to see your teammates get paid money. You want to see, because you know what, they have to pay their bills. They have families to take care of. But all of these guys saw the 8,000 to 9,000 fans come to watch a sport who they may not have even heard of until 2016, embrace them. They saw the warmth, and they saw firsthand what this game could be and where it's going. And they don't want to lose that. They don't want to lose the idea of this game becoming a global thing. They don't want to see it becoming a part of the fabric of Toronto for a very long time. And I love that the bulk of these guys have been saying, yes, bring the Wolfpack back, because they see what they bring to the game, and they see what they could bring for the future.
I'd love to know, if everything had gone well in 2020 and Toronto had managed to complete the season, where would you have loved to have seen a game of rugby league? Because we have so many different venues, and you go from the likes of Headingley, which is a wonderful cathedral of rugby league, and it sticks in the throat for me to say that as someone from their nearest and dearest city rivals in Wakefield, because we're a city as well, albeit a smaller one, to some villages. Featherstone is a village, and it's, as you say, a big culture shock. Where would you have loved to come over and watch some genuine rugby league?
Where would I love to go? I would love to go to Leeds. I would love to go and see the Leeds Rhinos play. I'd love to see Toronto and Leeds play, because, of course, maybe a little bit of bias being, having friends there who live there. But I would love to have seen the Rhinos play And knowing their history, knowing they had JJB there play for many, many years, someone I watched on Rugby AM for a while, I love to watch a game there because the fans in Leeds look to be very, very passionate from the minute the ball is kicked off. I love to go see a game in Leeds.
Oh, I've gone off him now.
He's a fine man. I told you that taste. You can just tell by the way he looks that he knows what he's talking about. You mentioned as well the NRL Grand Final that you watched. I mean, clearly, if we think about the game moving forward, it's in a difficult place, as every sport is at the moment, and life itself is tough for so many people, and that has to be the overriding concern. But let's assume the sport starts to be being a bit more forward-looking about where we go from here. Would you like to see something like the World Club Challenge, which again is not something that we've ever branded up and marketed properly as an event, played in Toronto, so that you would be able to watch Melbourne Storm and, you know, maybe Cameron Smith will do another year, and let's say St Helens win the Super League Grand Final because they're in pole position at the moment, look like the best team that we've got here. Now, should we be seriously thinking about, if we're going to cross-pollinate ideas and move the game forward, that the World Club Challenge between St Helens and Melbourne is played in Toronto, maybe at a bigger stadium than Lamport, and that with enough notice you can do sufficient marketing to get maybe 15,000, 20,000 people there, to get a broadcaster interested, to get perhaps a global brand associated with it. Papa John's, they do that in Toronto, I believe. Is that the way we should be looking at the future? Because this almost is a bit of a blank sheet of paper for everybody involved in all businesses.
I think so. I agree with that. I think definitely that should be the plan, to do that and make it a week-long event. Make it a week-long event where you have players from Melbourne, St. Helens, doing clinics with kids, get them involved in the game. Have them doing panels where they're talking to fans at events. Have them doing different things, autograph sessions where they're going around. Have them do segments, like do a segment where you're taking players from both teams and showing them around Toronto. Same to Niagara Falls. Like, that is how you build it up. Make it a week-long event. Get them around the city, and yeah, have NFL-style tailgating outside the stadium. Have appeal to the Australians and the English people who live in Toronto. That's how you get this game growing in this part of the world. And yeah, put that World Club Challenge at BMO Field where the Toronto FC plays. Put the 15,000 and 20,000 there. Like, and I think you will have a lot of people in both Super League and NRL say, wow, this is a way to market the game. This can work. So you never know. Maybe World Club Challenge permanently becomes an event that is played in North America as a way to market the game.
Is that one of those things? I've never been to Toronto. I've only seen it on TV. But I went to watch an NFL game in London because I'm a tourist and I wanted to go see a game. So I was able to go and watch a match. And it didn't matter that it was Jacksonville, who, as we know, are rubbish, and Buffalo, and Jacksonville, the Jaguars, they managed to go on and win the game. And it was exciting. And there we had the T-shirt cannons and everything. If we have a World Cup Challenge in Toronto, is that the kind of event you can sell to people who have never heard of rugby league and say, these are the two best teams in the world, and you're going to see them live on your doorstep, and perhaps that will kick on in the future, and people, you know, maybe go and watch the Wolfpack or watch a game on TV?
I think so. If you market as, you know, the two best teams, I think you could definitely get marketing involved in that and getting behind it, or even say history. If you have if you want to say have say St. Helens playing South Sydney and have the appeal that Russell Crowe owns the Rabbitohs and get that marketing behind there, you can all do that as well too. Or even also too the aforementioned plan that was supposed to happen of Toronto taking on Australia. That was supposed to happen in October, and we're supposed to be planning for that right now. So, you know, of course, it didn't happen. But I think that marketing of, you could have had, say, the Wolfpack are playing one of the best international teams in the world in Australia. You could get people going there and say, oh, they're playing Australia? Because people would want to go to, of course, see the big names of Australian Rugby League. But there'll be people who might say, can the Wolfpack beat them? You know, right now, could they? I'll be honest, right now, probably not. But people still want to see the idea of it happening.
Well, if you beat Australia once, it could happen.
It's benchmarking though, isn't it? Because if you say to the Wolfpack fans, here's the World Club Challenge, and you'd have to sign up for a minimum of 5 years because you'd want to build on it incrementally, and say if you missed it last year, it's coming next year. It's the hottest ticket in town all of a sudden. What you would be effectively saying is if the Wolfpack can get to the summit of Super League, the idea is they're going to be playing in this game. And if you say, I don't know if you saw it, the Challenge Cup final at Wembley the other week. Obviously, there's a lot of history and tradition associated with that. There's been some debate about whether the Toronto should be allowed into that competition or not. But presumably, if they got to the final of the Challenge Cup at a stadium like Wembley, that I would imagine a lot of sports fans over there would recognise as being internationally iconic, and we did have crowds of 70 or 80,000 there. That we need to give you that aspiration, don't we, rather than cap that avenue off?
Of course, absolutely. If you have the Wolfpack playing in Wembley, which I've known is a historic stadium, anyone who loves sport knows Wembley. If the Wolfpack are playing there, that would be a major event for Canadian sporting eyeballs. You would see Canadian attention. You might get the away fans coming to Wembley. And of course, I know away fans, that's one thing we don't bring as away fans. But I think you will finally see, the mythical away fans of the Wolfpack show up at Wembley to support them in front of 80,000 people.
Sandy will be there. That's all that matters. I'm sure Nicholas will try and get over as well. I know we're running low on time. So before I ask that, well, I should ask, are there any cardboard cutouts at the Lamport Stadium? Because this is another thing you're accused of. They're all cardboard cutouts there. If there are, no one told me because, guys, this is flesh and bone right here. There's no cardboard in me, Last time I checked, I'm a real person. So no, we don't have cardboard cutouts. That is very false. Everyone there is moving. It's real people walking around. And if cardboard cutouts could move, I'd be very scared. That would be very concerning. But no. They're all humans at Lamport. Let's put that to bed. Phil, have you got anything final to say? I think he's frozen.
I think he is, yes.
I think we lost Phil. Well, perfect timing because we are coming towards the end. So I will say, Avry, thank you very much for your time. You've given me plenty of energy. I was flagging a little bit before recording this, but obviously you've woken me up now, so that's great. I'm going to be up all the evening. The best of luck for whatever happens with Toronto coming up over the next few days. Hopefully it's positive news for yourself. And the main thing I hope is that yourself and everyone else over there. Oh, Phil's back. Are you back, Phil?
I am back. Yes, it started raining here in the north of England, and obviously the line temporarily went down.
Before I give lots of praise and good hope to Toronto as it was, have you got any final thoughts to ask our special guest today?
I just think that we need to sort of decide what we want sport to be. That there is no upside to the coronavirus, but what it does allow you is the chance to just step back and reevaluate and think where you want to be and how you're going to get there. And we've got some real issues at the moment with how do we complete this current Super League season, and we haven't spoken about maybe our ideas of how you do that, and I'm not even sure this is the forum to do that, but clearly Super League's primary concern over the next week or two is how do we get to that grand final at Hull at the end of November, and should less be more, and obviously that is a really serious issue, and we don't want to downplay that at all. And if your thoughts on that will be really interesting from outside. But more importantly, I think is you've got an absolutely vital part to play in the regeneration of rugby league. And if you do look back into its history, there have been moments and occasions of self-reflection where the sport has gone from what is seemed to be a low rung on a ladder to a pinnacle. I think you can and should and would bring something new and fresh and vibrant to be part of that. But I've always been an expansionist. Do you see us as incredibly reactionary, and that all of the PR you've seen around what the opinionizing on Toronto and what they should do and who they should be and how they should be part of our family, that's going to detract? Or are you still as enthusiastic as you were when you first saw 13 guys on a field beat the merry hell out of each other?
You know what? I still am, because I still think it is an excellent sport. And no matter what happens, you know what? People are going to be for it. People are going to be against it. I am still very much on board. I love the sport. I love the culture. And you know what? The Wolfpack have made it better. The Wolfpack have given us a true local team to back. They've given us a voice in the game. So you know what? If they're back in 2021, and if they're playing most of the games in England, you know what? It is what it is. Hopefully to get through it. But I'm still going to be supportive. I'm still going to cover the team and enjoy their run next year. If they're back in Canada, well then, hey, you know what? Those who don't like it, that's tough. The game's going to move forward, and you can stay in the past. That's you. But if they're playing in Toronto, come join us in the future. And I hope that they have a great season next year. I hope they build upon it to give confidence for Ottawa and for New York as well.
It is what it is. I think Phil's frozen again. So this is the amazing thing about technology. I can speak to you millions of miles away in Canada. Phil, he's back. Phil's up the road in Leeds. It just fails miserably. I mean,
I'll be interested to hear what the answer was when I watch the program back later.
I should say, number one thing is it's great to see someone bringing back headwear to Rugby League press boxes. I don't think since the days of Eddie wearing the trilby has been seen. So we're very pleased about that. I just hope one day you do get to come over and sample some of the salubrious and less salubrious parts of Rugby League that we've had the joy of doing so for many years, and we're glad that new people are finding our sport and that you're enjoying it, because we want people to know about our sport. There's too many people inside who want it to be kept to their little town or village and don't want people to know, because they don't want other people to know, because they want their little town or village to be successful. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Phil knows what I'm trying to say.
I think again, it's that balance that you've got to have between being extremely proud of what you've got and wanting the world to share it and be part of it, and be giving away some of your power and strength by allowing new blood in that might do things a little bit differently, and we find that very difficult. For me, it's an absolute pleasure that somebody who is, if you don't mind me using the word, a convert, is so evangelistic about the sport. I'm devastated that we couldn't get out to see you sometime this year. I think you'll love Super League, and that everything that you've been building up to, with the greatest respect to League One and the Championship, was geared up to having names out there that you would recognise in terms of the teams like the Wigans and the St Helens, but also the guys who play for them. You want to see Alex Walmsley because he is one of the great props of the modern era. And I think you put that marriage together of enthusiasm and new markets with the strength of the sport at its elite level, which is all that sells at the moment. It's a global world that we live in, whether we like it or not. I think it's a potential marriage made in heaven. So more power to you for promoting us over there. And also, let's hope that some of the people that are going to be making the decision about the value of Toronto to the sport take on board what you want to bring to it, because I'm convinced that some issues that we've got at the moment, we will get over. It won't be easy. The players are doing it incredibly tough, and we should never forget that they're the number one priority. But we need to get our players out to your part of the world to give them those experiences, and the fans as well. And I just hope it goes the right way when people decide, and we can do another podcast, but in person.
And I'm fairly sure that when I did write about Inside Super League months ago in 4020 magazine, I'm sure I was very positive about your hat. I'm sure I was. And if I wasn't, Phil would have edited it out anyway, because he's a good man. Avry, the floor is yours. What would you like to plug, and where can the listeners and the viewers find you?
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Avry, at AVRY. You can find my own podcast, Avry Sports Show, on SoundCloud.com/Avry Sports. I also do another podcast called The Brian Avry Hour with my co-host, Brad Bartko, also on SoundCloud. And yeah, those are my links. And I want to say one final thing about Rugby League. Gentlemen, I love the fact that Rugby League is still doing a Black History Month event, because being someone of color, being a black man in Rugby League, and learning about the history of the sport, I love the fact that they're still promoting the history, the guys like the Billy Bostons, other black Rugby League players. I love the fact, and Roy Francis, who was a coach, I love the fact that Rugby League has never forgotten the fact that it was a sport that for decades embraced black players, black coaches, and also black members of the media in the sport.
Well, we're glad you appreciate that, and we're glad to have had you on. I'm glad finally I sorted this thing out, because we said we were going to do it for weeks, and now we have. We wish you well. All of our listeners, I know Sid will have loved this program and a whole hour about Toronto. He'll be straight on there following you on Twitter, I'm sure. There's some rugby this weekend. Enjoy it, because unlike your CFL fans in Canada who've had nothing to cheer about this year, no games at all, at least, as much of a mess it has been at times this year, Phil, at least we still have games to watch, and we should be grateful for that.
Yeah, I think we need to be wary of the fact that if we are going to get to something called a credible end of this season, we now need to be at the point where we protect the players. They are the greatest asset. There's no point putting games on television if they're not of a sufficient quality. We want the last night of the season at Hull to be the best players facing each other. So I think now is the time to protect them. To less is more. Virtually every team has got to the minimum threshold of 15 games. You can get a credible end of season out of that. There's a lot of matches scheduled that we don't need to play. Let's look after the sport. Let's look after the guys that play the sport. Let's give the broadcasters what they need. Let's build to a final. Let's include Toronto next season in a 12-team Super League. Let's take the world by storm, and let's see more of Avery.
Oh, this is far too positive. We're going to have to end. Phil, thank you very much as ever. Me and him will be back next week at some point. Avery, thank you very much for your time. Stay safe and all that stuff. And hopefully we shall see you, as Phil said, over here in the future. And if not, we'll come over there. Somehow we'll blag a free trip like everyone else has.
Awesome. Sounds good, gentlemen.
Good to see you. Stay safe.